Okay, we're going to talk about the head and deep perspective. So remember, we're using that LTL idea. And if I can get a basic simple shape, and it could be, or simple shapes, it could be all sorts of things. I like to do simple shapes, even if they're simplest, that have lots of corners and have lots of curves, because the curves give life, the corners give good landmarks to measure off of, and they create that box logic, and that's that LTL. The L could be the center, first L is center line of the face to the back of the skull. The T is the, let's get rid of that, the eyebrow line, let's say, over to the ear. And that eyebrow line is the center line, I should say, and then the eyebrow line over the ear is the other L. So now we have that box logic, and we can then notice when we have a boxy idea, give or take the vanishing of the perspective. Here comes the rain and hail. It sounds like it's just rain this time. These things all line up. Eyebrow line is there. Outside corners of the eyes, tip of the nose, corners of the mouth. Corners of the mouth, chin. Notice what happened with that mouth. As soon as I get that out of parallel, back of the head, if I can make whatever I'm drawing boxy, it has this wonderful way of aligning things together. Lower lip, chin, makes it a lot easier. And because we're drawing organic structures, we don't have to have these vanish to some linear perspective, too much like math kind of discipline that drives a lot of artists crazy. So we just pick those things up, and then we can start to see if they're a little out of whack and more quickly correct them, like I did the mouth, like I just did the ear, and so on. So that box logic, putting an invisible box over something and getting everything to line up with the directions of the box, not having to worry about vanishing points, everything coming to some point on the horizon based on eye level. You just do that. They can be parallel, and if they're not quite parallel, we can shake that off to them being organic. So a little bit out of whack might be okay. Might be a little cowlick in the hairstyle or something. Might be a raise of one eyebrow. But it gives us something to measure and compare to. If we make things too round, then it gets really hard to create limits. And if I'm doing a Picasso, that could be good, but it might give me a little trouble. So I don't like things that are too round or too egg-like too often, because eggs get lumpy together. We're never quite sure, or oftentimes not quite sure, where one egg begins and one ends, where the side ends and the bottom or the top ends. Whereas a box, you always know. And then if you curve each line, each side of each plane, then you can have that kind of organic, full feeling of life and still have those corners pretty well. Now, the problem when we get into deep perspective, there's a bunch of them. And if we use linear perspective, it can be really useful or really difficult. I prefer any of these craft engineering things, laws of light, linear perspective, aerial perspective even, canons of beauty, all these kind of intellectual how-to measuring math-like solutions, physics-type solutions, color theory. I prefer to figure them out intuitively and then weave in some of that that theory into it, maybe a lot of the theory to give or take. But if I can get them intuitively worked out, it's more productive. I actually find I'll level up quicker. It's not as frustrating. It's a little funner, a little more creative. We can play a little bit more with them than we might feel like we could if we've got that vanishing point right where it's supposed to be. But here's the problem. If we look at a head in profile, it's a real simple head. We'll have the forehead come out and go back in. The nose will come out, go back in. The upper mouth will go out. The upper lip will go back in. The lower lip will go out. Lower lip will go back in. The chin will go out. Chin will go back in. Look at all those stair steps, and maybe you got a hairstyle here that does that as well. Maybe a cowlick kind of thing. Look at that, back and forth, back and forth. Now we can manage that in a flat perspective with a little bit of practice, and sometimes a little more than a little bit of practice. But we can get that under control and deal with the inside back and forth, zigzags. See the zigzags? So easy to screw that up. But we can manage those when they're in a flat perspective. But in a deeper perspective, it gets a lot harder. And the main reason I would think that it gets harder is the proportions. Because look what happens here. Let's go back. And let's take this out so it's not distracting. Maybe lose that so it's not distracting. If I'm going to look, lose this too. If I'm going to look right at this person, then I'm going to start to notice something interesting if I look carefully. If you look at me, I'm looking straight at the camera, straight on. You are seeing me in flat perspective, right? That's different than this or this. But even when I'm in flat perspective here, the nose is actually a little foreshortened. Nose is coming out this way. The face is going flat, but the nose is coming out. And so when we look straight on at a nose, unless it's flattened, too many punches to it or something, we'll actually see it as being a little shorter than it actually is. This is a longer nose, but we're seeing it this way, flattened. And notice every time it goes way out or way in, we're getting I'll cheat on that to make it a more dramatic point. We're getting a foreshortening, a lesser visual of its true length. So this arm is 3.5 feet long, let's say. Not according to your eye, it's not. Now it's only 6 inches long. So it visually shortens up. So all of the features are going back and forth. And if we look at the eye, on the nose, the upper lid goes out. The thickness of the lower lid goes back. The eyeball is fairly flat. There's a subtle curvature. But the thickness of the upper lid goes out. Lower lid goes down. Apple of the cheek goes out. Pull back of the dimpled grin goes back. Each of these lines, each of the zigs and each of the zags is going to be foreshortened. So if I take all this stuff that's foreshortening one way or the other, some gets flat right here, tip of the nose. The upper lip area might be basically flat. Maybe the front of the chin is flat. But a lot of it's going deeply foreshortened. So now if I take that whole thing and get under it, all that foreshortening gets a little crazy. So notice that the nose, I'll look right at the camera, I was looking at myself. The nose is foreshortened. If I drop down, it actually gets longer. If I go up just a little bit, what was already foreshortened becomes extremely foreshortened. Look how short that nose is now. So it can be really, really tricky because not only are those constructions in these non-ordinary positions, things we're not used to. We're not used to talking to people like this. We're usually in flat perspective to people. So we have to pay careful attention to that, and it can be really overwhelming and confusing. So if we look at the Rubens, we're on top of that head. It's going back in the page. I cropped it for YouTube's algorithms. But notice the nose is getting a little longer here. The thickness of the upper lip is lost. There is no thickness. Same way with this stuff. We'll see all sorts of things going on here. So let's do this first. And let's just get a couple principles here. So here's the wonderful Michelangelo. I learned more from this drawing than in any other piece of art in history. But notice the box logic. Look at the corrugator area or the furrowed brow. Look at the arch of the eyebrow on the other side. Upper lid, crease of the upper lid, lower lid, tone of the skull cap meeting the forehead. It's not exactly as I'm showing it, but it's very, very close. The hairline, back of the head. If we can't absolutely see it, we can feel that box logic in there. Tip of the nose, upper lip, lower lip, chin. Not exactly right every time, but very, very close. And he's even cleverly used some of the tones, some of the mark making that's not on the front plane. This is wrapping around the side, but it still lines up. This is on the side, but it still lines up in that same thinking there, corner of the lip. So he's really hitting us over the head with that box logic. So interesting to see. When we go to the side planes on the head, eyebrow to the ear, front of the head to the back of the head, along the temple line, we can see past that squish of that digastric plane, front of the chin to the jaw. Notice these side planes don't necessarily line up because they're lifting up or dropping down. Ear is a little lower than the eyebrow. Back of the head's a little higher than the front of the head. Jaw, corner of the jaw is way higher than the chin. So those don't necessarily line up. They might, like the nose, or they might be a little off, like the eye, or they might be way off. But those front planes are all lining up. And the more often you can get things lining up in the same, it doesn't have to be vanishing perspective, parallel perspective, the more solid it will seem, the more boxy and well constructed it will seem. You can see those tones. There's a reason that's going that way and this is going this way. So we want to keep that in mind. So we want to align planes that are on the same plane. Front plane lines with front plane lines. Top plane lines with top plane lines. Align them in some kind of parallelism, give or take their organic character. And even when they do have a odd organic character, try and create alignments with things. Well, I can't do it with the eyebrow, I can do it with the eye. Try and get some parallelism wherever you can in these organic things. That's box logic, even if it's just for a moment there. I don't want to do that. And when you don't do that, it gets a little funny. Here's that same Rubens that I showed you before. That's the pose. I flipped it. And if we look at it, we'll see that some of these things are a little off. Well, the eye line and the upper lip and the lower lip are lined up. The furrowed brow is lined up. The eyebrow line kind of feels off just slightly. And that can be because of the angle, because of the asymmetry of the character or not, but it might feel like it's a little off. It feels to me like this eyeball here is just a little off from this eyeball there. So we might want to do a little more work on that other side and tweak it a little bit to get it in alignment, or we might want to celebrate the asymmetry. Any choice would be a good choice. This is one of my favorite drawings in Baroque history. So I'm not criticizing it to try and puff myself up. I'm trying to decide, is that a good choice for me or not? Rubens is a brilliant drawing. I wish I could do something anywhere close to this before I pass on. But that choice, I might have done something a little different. That's a good thing to pay attention to. Not hubris, it's finding your own voice and studying your craft and getting conscious about your decisions. So now when we start to deal with deep perspective ideas, we need to be really careful. Since we have our same watcher here, same viewer, now looking at the head up, they'll look in and they'll see almost no nose in terms of length. In fact, the tip of the nose is going to be somewhere close to the eye. So one of the things I'll do is, if I'm looking at a face, I'll just draw it because I'm used to looking at that. But if that face goes up at all, I'll want to see how close the tip of the nose, and it can be the highlight, a shadow, whatever you want to pick as a landmark on the tip of the nose. How close is that tip of the nose to the eye line? It'll very quickly get up there. And then when I go down, how close is that nose to the mouth? And I'll find it might even overlap the mouth. I'm going to check tell me if you guys can hear me with all the chatter of the rain. Hey Charlene, you said you can't hear the rain. Is it too loud for you to hear me, or is it okay? I'll wait a second since we're on delay. Let me know if you guys can hear me through that rain. I'll take a sip of coffee. The rainstorm. Okay, so I'll assume you guys can hear me. Nobody directly answered, but nobody complained either. So we want to watch that. So let's take a look at a few heads and see what we can see. So first off, let me go back here. Again, the head's tipping Head's tipping down this way. So we're getting on top of the head. And so this side's getting lower. And notice if we were, as we look at this, you can see that nose is a little closer to the lips than it normally would be, because that nose is starting to foreshorten over the top of it. So we're getting a little bit of that. The lower lip is crowding the chin, getting closer to the chin than it normally would be. The upper lip, we've lost all but all of its thickness because we're getting on top of the upper lip. So we want to kind of pay attention to that. We'll see those proportional changes subtly show up in a subtle perspective. And sometimes we can get away with not understanding or capturing those. But when we get into the severe perspectives, we've got to pay attention to them. So you can see here, here's Raphael. And again, you can see how close it's getting to that upper lip. We're losing this chunk here. Lower lip stays nice and fat because it's showing itself to us. Chin is getting a little compressed. And the forehead would also be getting a little bit compressed, but the hairstyle is covering that. These Renaissance, they tend to tip those ears forward, which I never cared for. High Renaissance, I love it. It's my favorite place to go for great drawings, but I've never cared for their ears. And I love doing that. I love taking my heroes, taking them down a peg, not to build myself up, but to distinguish myself. What do I love to do that's a little different than what these greatest in history did? That's good for me. That's going to let me find my own voice and not be a slave to their choices. So here's a Signorelli, I believe. And you see we're way underneath this one, right? So we could maybe draw the whole thing as an egg. And when I get these severe perspectives, here's a trick I'll do. So he's got this jaw and neck and probably the shoulder in here. I'm not going to draw any of that probably, or if I do, I'll do it super light. And even the bottom of the egg, super light, not committing to it. And then I'll go back up to the top. And I'm going to say, how much forehead? Now, usually there's a lot of forehead, but I'm going to look over and not in the big areas, in the tightest areas. Look at where the eyebrow, how close it gets to the forehead. There's the eyebrow. Here's the eye socket. The other thing I'll pay attention to is when we get these deep tilts into the paper, these normally fairly easy to see leans can be really confusing. You're going way back this way and it's leaning this way. You can get this off really easy. So I'll compare it to a grid to see how far off it is from a grid. Or I'll just close my eye and hold my pencil up to that page, and wherever my pencil is, that's how I'll draw the line. But look at how close the eyebrow eye socket area is to the top of the forehead. That's very different than that. Look at how much depth we have here. And then look at that nose. When the head goes up, and compare that tip of the nose to the eye line. And we won't get in it now, but because the forehead comes forward, goes back, nose comes forward. When that eyebrow eye socket goes back, this distance also gets bigger when we get underneath it. So you can see how much space there is between the eyebrow and the upper lid. And we're not seeing that full upper lid. This thickness is gone. This got bigger, this got less. More here, less there. There's the eyes in there. Construction line over. Eyes in there. Do that so you can see it. Look at how that's changed. More in one place, less in another. So I draw it and keep this uncommitted. Either don't draw it at all or draw it light, assuming it's wrong. And then I work my way down little step by little step. The forehead to the eyebrow, eyebrow to the upper lid to the lower lid. Where's the nose? Is it down here? You'd be surprised how many people draw it that way because we're used to seeing it that way. I'm going to mark it off up here. And notice that highlight is closer to the upper lid than it is to the lower lid. And oftentimes I'll just do a little triangle and maybe curve the bottom of that little ziggurat or a triangle with the tip cut off. And that becomes kind of the shadowy underside in there. And then the mouth, mark those things off. And then the chin. And then here is, and we'll deal with that other side of the jaw another time. Here is where that egg of the face ends. Like so. This is all digastric plane under here. And then the neck, throat will meet that plane someplace, pick up there. So I usually do it like that. The problem with this is that usually you're drawing just a mask of the face and not the whole skull. So you're going to need to come back and add the skull, add the ears if you could see them. Skull or the hairstyle and pick it up. Let's do one more thing about that. Draw a little bit more generic. So I'm just going to draw an egg. for a head. It's kind of in the same position. I'm not going to pay attention to that. Now I'm going to work my way down. A little bit of forehead before the eyebrows or eye sockets begin. Maybe I'll go to the arch of the eyebrows. It's a little square. Maybe it's a little rounder. Maybe I'll draw the whole eye socket, or maybe I'll draw the eye line. Where the nose, let's say it's a little bit below that. Ears will be in here someplace. They'll line up like these do. Chin will be in here. It looks a little bit like a balloon man right now, doesn't it? So, let's see here. I'll ghost that back a little bit. So when you start to, and notice I still haven't committed to that digastric plane. I'll come back here and I'll chisel everything a little bit. So I'll make an egg more boxy. And I'll look to the symmetry. This is corner, this is corner, this is side, this is side. They're all going to play off that same axis. So, like so. Or I'll just leave it all rounded, or split the difference. I'll make it curved and then chisel it down front to side. I'll curve the front side. Any of those are fine. You can test them out. But what I'll do here is I'll come back here and square that. Square those sides a little bit. You can see Signorelli did it here a bit, right in here, a little square in line with the center line. Here we can't see it so much. It's lost in the squish of the cheek against that shoulder, it looks like. But I'll play it down here. And I'll make for a little bit better connections. A little more time placing the proportions first time around. Second time around, I'll get better connections. So I'm going to show the divot where the forehead goes back before the nose goes forward. That's what I'm drawing right here. Corner of the mouth, corner of the mouth. It's going to line up wing of the nose, outside corner of the eye, outside corner of the eye. They're all going to play on that same construction. And you can curve that construction. They could be playing here. Eyebrows are here. So it could be on a curved line, but I'll keep it straighter just for the heck of it. And sometimes I'll even need to do a little bit of rendering and stuff to get to be sure, whatever it takes to be sure. Lay that in there. And then work it back to that mask. And that digastric plane. And then make sure that you add a skull, excuse me, or a hairstyle to it. Got a kitty calling me. So notice when it's a more difficult form or a more difficult position, and these are both that, I slow way down and I try and visualize the complete shape, but I don't commit to it. There was the original egg. I had to make it smaller in width and much smaller in length. So then I'll break it down little bit by little bit, working all the way through. There's a highlight on the nose, right about, again, I'm not doing this one, but right about where the eye line is on these underneath ideas. So I'm looking for connection, even if it's just proportional, this to this, this to this, this to this, little bit, a lot, working my way down. So let's stop there.